I didn't see the knife until it was already buried in my spine. Victoria sat at the head of the mahogany table. Her fingers steepled like she was praying for patience. But the only thing she was patient with was my downfall. The diamond on her left hand, the one I bought her in Maui, caught the sterile overhead light, sending a shard of white-hot pain into my retinas. She hadn't worn that ring since our second anniversary. Seeing it now felt like a threat. Beside her, Brad was leaning against the wall, all tan skin and teeth that were just a little too white. He was trying to look casual, like he belonged there, but his foot was tapping a nervous staccato against the baseboard. He couldn't hide the smirk, though that was always his tell. "Ethan," Victoria started, her voice that crisp, icy tone she usually reserved for hostile takeovers and firing interns. "This meeting isn't a discussion. It's a notification." I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under my weight, and crossed my arms. I didn't bother looking at the two other board members present, Sarah Chun from Legal and Mark Jensen from Venture Capital. They were already staring at their notepads, avoiding eye contact like I was a car crash they couldn't bear to witness. "Let me guess," I said, my voice sounding way calmer than I felt. "Brad here finally figured out how to turn on a monitor without asking Siri. And you decided you don't need me anymore?" Brad pushed off the wall, smoothing down his custom-tailored suit jacket. The guy spent more on dry cleaning than most of our dev team made in a month. "Watch your mouth. Man, this is professional." "Professional?" I laughed. It came out harsh, echoing in the silent, glass-walled room. "You're the least professional guy in this building. Brad, you're the guy who still uses bro in emails to the CFO. You're the guy who thought blockchain was a new type of skateboard. Don't talk to me about professional." Victoria slammed her palm on the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. "Enough." She slid a piece of paper across the polished wood toward me. "I've seen the reports. Ethan, the discrepancies in the Q3 projections. And this." She tapped the paper with a manicured nail. "This little conversation you allegedly had about selling our proprietary tech to Meridian Solutions." I didn't even pick up the paper. I just looked at her, really looked at her. 5 years of marriage. 3 years of building this goddamn company from a garage in Palo Alto to a skyscraper in downtown San Francisco. And she couldn't tell when I was being set up. Or maybe she could, and she just didn't care. Maybe she'd wanted this for a long time. "That's a fake," I said flatly, meeting her steely blue eyes. "The header's wrong. The font's Calibri, not Aptus. And I haven't spoken to anyone at Meridian since the Gartner conference last November. You know, when you were too busy closing the deal with Siemens to fly out and join me." Brad moved to stand beside Victoria's chair, putting a possessive hand on her shoulder. She didn't shake him off. She leaned into it. "He's lying. Vic, we talked about this. He's unstable. Ever since the Series B launch, he's been volatile, paranoid, working late every night. Who does that unless they're hiding something? Volatile. That was the word they were going with. Not genius. Not architect. Not the guy who wrote the entire code base for Aura while she was out networking at wine bars. Volatile." I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. I walked over to the glass interface embedded in the wall, the master control panel for Aura, the predictive algorithm that was the heart and soul of Vantage Corporation. My thumbprint glowed green as I hovered over the scanner. My iris skin clicked softly, a blue light sweeping over my eye. "You want it gone?" I asked, turning around to face them. Victoria was already reaching for the master key drive on the table, a sleek, silver rectangle that looked important but was actually just a glorified paperweight in this context. I chuckled. "You think it's that simple? Then I'm just going to hand over the keys to the kingdom because you two had a little chat?" Brad scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Bullshit. Everything's got a backdoor. Even your ego." "Ethan, not this," I said, tapping the glass panel. The screen lit up, displaying a complex, swirling vortex of data. "Aura isn't a file you can drag into a trash bin. Brad, it's a living neural network. It's tied to my biometrics, my pulse, my neural patterns. If I stop breathing, or if I log out right now." I paused, letting the weight of it settle in the room. Sarah Chun finally looked up from her notepad, her eyes wide. "It doesn't just shut down. It locks. Permanently. No backdoor. No override. Not even for the board. Not even for Victoria. Mark Jensen cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Ethan, surely there's a contingency plan we discussed. We didn't. I cut him off, because no one thought Victoria would be stupid enough to pull a stunt like this. No offense. Vic. Victoria's face flushed a deep, angry red. Don't you dare talk to me about stupidity. You become impossible to work with. You treat this company like your personal fiefdom. I am a CEO. I am a public face of Vantage. All you do is hide in the server room and play God with lines of code. I am the reason you have a public face to begin with. I shot back, my control finally slipping. Who do you think built the infrastructure that handles 3 million transactions a day? Who do you think optimized the logistics so we're beating Amazon's delivery times? You? You can barely optimize your Instagram filters. Brad stepped forward, getting between me and Victoria like some kind of discount bodyguard. Back off. Ethan, it's over. She's done with you, professionally and personally. So why don't you just do us all a favor and hand over the access codes before we have security escort you out? I looked at Victoria. Is that what you want? To throw away 5 years of marriage and 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears because your high school sweetheart suddenly showed up and told you what you wanted to hear? Victoria stood up, her chin jutting out defiantly. But I saw the flicker in her eyes. A moment of hesitation. It was gone in a flash, replaced by that cold, corporate mask she wore so well. What I want is for you to leave, quietly, and for you to sign the IP transfer agreement Brad drafted. Once you do that, we won't pursue charges for corporate espionage. Charges. Espionage. The words hit me like physical blows. I glanced at Brad. He was grinning now, a smug, self-satisfied grin that made me want to break his perfect nose. He planned this. He'd been feeding her lies for weeks, poisoning her against me. Also, he could slide into my seat and play CEO. I turned back to the glass panel. My finger hovered over the logout icon. It was a big, red button, literally and figuratively. Ethan, Sarah Chen whispered, her voice tight with warning. Don't. Think about the shareholders. Think about the employees. I looked at her. I am thinking about them. I'm thinking about how they're going to explain to 3,000 people why their paychecks just bounced because the system can't process payroll. Stop him, Victoria shouted, lunging for me, but I was already pressing the button. The screen didn't just go black. It dissolved. The swirling vortex of data seemed to suck inward, collapsing into a single point of light before winking out of existence. In the sudden, heavy silence that followed, I could hear the low hum of the servers in the basement floor below us stutter, hiccup, and then die. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, and then stabilized on backup power, casting the room in a sickly yellow hue. Victoria froze, her hand outstretched. Her face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. What did you do? I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair, sliding it on with deliberate slowness. I handed him my resignation and my keys, effective immediately. Brad was the first to recover. He rushed over to the dead panel, mashing his fingers against the glass. It's not responding. Vic, it's not working. I told you. I said, walking toward the door. No biometrics. No system. It's not a bug. Brad, it's a feature. One I installed after our little security scare last year. Remember? When someone tried to hack us from the inside. Turns out, I was right to be paranoid. Security chose that moment to step into the room. 2 burly guys in black uniforms looking uncertainly at the scene. Mr. Cole? One of them asked. We got a call to escort you out? I nodded. Lead the way. Marcus. I knew both of them by name. I'd approved their hiring. As I walked past Victoria, she reached out, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her nails digging into my suit jacket. I'll sue you, she hissed, her composure finally cracking. Tears were welling in her eyes, but whether they were from rage or fear, I couldn't tell. I'll take everything you have. I'll make sure you never work in this town again. I looked down at her hand, then back up at her face. I gently peeled her fingers off my arm. You already took everything. Beak, you took my time, my energy, my best ideas, and my trust. Now, you get to live with the consequences. I paused at the door, looking back at the woman I had once loved more than anything in the world. She was standing there, shaking, surrounded by the people who had enabled her betrayal. Brad was frantically tapping on his phone, probably trying to call a consultant. Sarah Chan was staring at the dead panel like it might spontaneously reboot if she glared hard enough. "Watch what happens," I said quietly. When the lights go out, I walked out into the hallway, the click of my loafers on the marble floor echoing in the sudden silence. The open-plan office beyond the glass walls was starting to stir. People were looking up from their desks, noticing the lack of the usual ambient hum from the servers, noticing the dead screens. Whispers were starting to spread like wildfire. Marcus and his partner escorted me to the elevators. As the doors slid shut, I caught one last glimpse of Victoria through the glass. She was screaming at Brad now, her perfectly coiffed hair shaking with the force of it. Good. Let her scream. The elevator began its descent from the 42nd floor. I pulled out my phone. There were 17 missed calls from Victoria, 3 from Brad, and a bunch from unknown numbers. I blocked them all. Then, I opened a private messaging app and typed a single line to a contact labeled only as Ghost. Protocol 0 initiated. Proceed to Phase 2. The reply was instantaneous. Acknowledged. Liquidation sequence starting now. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and watched the floor numbers tick down. Outside, the San Francisco drizzle had turned into a steady rain, blurring the skyline of the city that had been my home for a decade. I thought about the life I was leaving behind at the penthouse in Pacific Heights, the Tesla in the garage, the corner office with the view of the Bay Bridge. Victoria thought she was winning. She thought she was cutting me loose to save money and boost her ego. She had no idea she'd just unplugged the foundation of her entire empire. The elevator chimed as it reached the lobby. The doors opened. I stepped out into the vast, marble-floored atrium. The security desk was unmanned. The guards were probably already upstairs dealing with the chaos. I walked past the reception area, where the giant LED display behind the front desk was nothing but a black screen. A few employees were gathered around, murmuring anxiously. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out into the wet, cold afternoon. I didn't have an umbrella, but I didn't care. The rain felt good, cleansing. I walked to the curb and waited. A sleek, unmarked black Audi pulled up. Not my car, but one I'd arranged for weeks ago, just in case. The rear window rolled down, revealing Claire Donovan, my personal attorney. She was sharp, mid-40s, with a no-nonsense bob and eyes that missed nothing. Quite a show. "Ethan," she said, her voice dry. "The biometric lock?" Bold move. I slid into the leather seat beside her, pulling the door shut against the rain. Necessary move. "Did you get the papers?" She handed me a thick envelope, signed, sealed, and delivered to the SEC an hour ago, the moment you logged out. The IP reverted to you personally, per the founder's agreement she signed when we incorporated. She doesn't own Aura anymore. "Ethan, you do." I looked back at the towering glass facade of Vantage Corporation on the 42nd floor. I could just make out a figure standing by the window. Victoria. Even from this distance, I could feel the weight of her stare. She's going to realize soon that the glitches aren't just glitches, I said, watching as a few more lights on the upper floors flickered and died. Aura isn't just offline. It's rerouting every pending transaction to offshore accounts I set up 6 months ago. By midnight, Vantage Corp will be $300 million lighter. Claire started the car, pulling smoothly away from the curb. And the logic bomb? Embedded in the core code. If Brad or anyone else tries to rewrite the permissions without my biometric signature, the entire database will wipe itself. Permanently. No backups. No recovery. Claire let out a low whistle. "You've been planning this for a while. Since the day she introduced me to Brad at a Christmas party, and I saw the way she looked at him." I said, "I didn't build Aura to be stolen. Especially not by someone who thinks synergy is a real word." We drove in silence for a few blocks, merging onto the Embarcadero. The rain was coming down harder now, the wipers working overtime to clear the windshield. "Where to?" Claire asked. "SFO. I said, "Book me on the next flight to Austin." I have a meeting with a few VCs who've been very interested in a new predictive algorithm called Aura X. Claire nodded, already tapping on her tablet. Consider it done. And Ethan? Happy anniversary. I looked out the window at the gray, churning water of the bay. Today was our 5th wedding anniversary. I'd almost forgotten. Yeah, I murmured, watching the Vantage Corp building shrink in the distance. Happy anniversary, Victoria. Hope you enjoy the gift. As we turned a corner, blocking the building from view, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Probably Victoria. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. I powered the phone off, tossed it out the window into the rain, and settled back into the seat. The game was just beginning, and this time, I was playing with a stacked deck. The coffee in the break room tasted like burnt motor oil. I didn't drink it. I just watched the steam curl up toward the acoustic tiles, listening to the low-grade hum of a building that was slowly suffocating itself. Across town, in a Vantage Corp headquarters, the hum had stopped. My phone vibrated against the scarred wooden table. It was Claire. "Talk to me," I said, keeping my eyes on the rain streaking the window of the dive bar in Oakland. "It's beautiful, Ethan," she purred, the satisfaction thick in her voice. Absolute poetry. At 9:03 a.m., exactly 1 minute after market open, Aura started repricing the entire catalog. $499 smart TVs are currently listed at 5 cents. Shipping is negative $20. I allowed myself a small smile. Negative shipping? Yep. Aura is paying customers $50 to take our premium laptops. Brad just tried to push an emergency patch. He failed. Sarah Chun is having a meltdown in the server room. Victoria is currently screaming at a junior IT guy named Kevin because he can't just Google the password. Kevin, I repeated, shaking my head. Poor bastard. Want the best part? Claire didn't wait for an answer. Victoria just wired $300 million to an escrow account in the Caymans to stabilize liquidity. Too bad Aura rerouted it to your holding company 30 seconds later. I lean back, the vinyl booth creaking. Is she scared yet? Scared? Claire laughed. She's pale. Ethan, I've got a friend in the building. Says she's locked herself in her office with Brad. He's telling her he can hack the mainframe if she just gives him admin privileges. Brad couldn't hack a vending machine. I muttered. Keep me posted. I'm heading to the airport in 20. See you in Austin. Claire said. Hanging up, I tossed the phone onto the table and signaled the bartender for another soda. I wasn't drinking. Not yet. There was still too much to do. Meanwhile, 42nd floor, Vantage Corp. Victoria threw her glass of top-shelf whiskey against the wall. The crystal shattered, spraying amber liquid across the imported rug. Fix it, she shrieked, jabbing a finger at Brad. You said you understood the architecture. You said you could handle it. Brad flinched, running a hand through his artfully messy hair. I can. Beak. I need more time. Ethan's a jerk for making it so complicated. But I'm in the back end now. I just need to bypass the... You're not in the back end. Brad. Sarah Chun stormed into the office, her lab coat stained with what looked like energy drink. You're clicking buttons on a diagnostic dashboard that hasn't updated since yesterday. Do you even understand what's happening? Aura isn't just an app. It's the nervous system. It controls the warehouses, the payment processors, the automated customer service bots, everything. Then fix it. Victoria turned on her, eyes wild. You're the CTO. That's your job. Sarah's face hardened. She was done. My job was to oversee the technology Ethan built. I don't have the biometric keys. None of us do. Every time Brad tries to force a command, he's triggering the fail-safes Ethan left behind. The system thinks we're intruders. It's liquidating assets to protect the core data. Brad stood up, puffing out his chest. This is sabotage, plain and simple. We should call the FBI. Cyber terrorism. Sarah laughed. A short, bitter sound. Call them. Explain to a federal judge how your first love couldn't hack it. So he broke the multi-billion-dollar system. See how that plays in the press. Victoria sank into her leather chair, her hands trembling as she picked up her office phone. She stabbed at the buttons. Security? Give me the lawyers. I want an injunction against Ethan Cole. I want his bank account frozen. I want him arrested for theft. She hung up and looked at Brad. He's going to pay for this. Brad knelt beside her chair, taking her hand. We'll get through this. Babe, I'm here now. I'll build you a new system. Something even better. Victoria looked at his hand. Soft, uncalloused. The hand of a man who'd never lifted a finger to build anything. And felt a cold knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Ethan's hands had always been rough. Steady. Get out. Brad. She whispered. What? I said get out. I need to think. Brad hesitated, then stood, his pride wounded. Fine. But don't forget who was here when you needed someone. Beak. Unlike him. He sauntered out. Victoria dropped her head into her hands. The silence in the office was deafening. Usually, she could hear the faint whir of the servers, the rhythmic pulse of the company's success. Now, there was nothing but the occasional panic shout from the bullpen outside. Her private cell buzzed. A text from her CFO, Mark Jensen. Think we have a problem. The automated payroll system just processed $50 million in severance to an account in the British Virgin Islands. The one Ethan set up last year as a rainy day fund. It's empty. All of it. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. She typed back with shaking fingers. Freeze it. Can't. Mark replied instantly. The transaction was logged under founder's privilege. Ethan's signature is the only one that can reverse it, and the system won't accept any new inputs without his biometrics. She stared at the screen. 50 million. Gone. Just like that. And the 5-cent TVs. At this rate, they'd be bankrupt by noon. She had to talk to him. She had to make him understand. She found his number in her recent calls. Her thumb hovered over the green button. Pride warred with desperation. Finally, desperation won. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times, just as she thought it would go to voicemail. He picked up. Ethan, she breathed, relief flooding her. Victoria, he said. His voice was calm, distant. No anger, no words, just detached. You're calling early. The liquidation usually takes an hour to hit the news wires. Stop it, she demanded, though it came out as a plea. Please, whatever you're doing, just stop. We can talk. I'll reinstate you. I'll double your salary. Just come back and fix the system. There was a pause. I could picture him on the other end, maybe looking out at the tarmac, a faint smirk on his lips. Fix it? He repeated. Victoria, I didn't break it. I just unplugged myself. The system is doing exactly what I designed it to do when I'm no longer the primary operator. It's protecting itself and, incidentally, liquidating the assets of anyone who tries to claim ownership without my consent. You can't do this. She whispered. It's our company. Our life. It was my company. He corrected. You were just a face. And our life ended the moment you let Brad touch the server rack. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. I'll sue you, she said, the familiar threat feeling hollow now. I'll take you for everything. You can try. Ethan interrupted, his tone bored. But check your inbox. Victoria. Claire Donovan. You remember Claire. My Sharko lawyer. She filed the IP reversion papers with the SEC this morning for the founders' agreement you signed in Hawaii. If I'm terminated without cause, all intellectual property reverts to me. Aura isn't yours anymore. It's mine. And right now, it's currently processing a buyout of all outstanding Vantage shares using the funds it just moved offshore. By sunset, Vantage Corp will legally belong to me. Again, Victoria's heart stopped. You can't. I already did. Check the NASDAQ feed. Vic Vantage stock just dropped 40%. It's a fire sale, and I'm the only bidder. Enjoy the view from your corner office while it lasts. Oh, and tell Brad thanks for the assist. His attempt to hack the system triggered the final clause, the one that transfers all remaining liquid capital to my new venture. Ohaiks. He hung up. Victoria sat in the sudden silence, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Outside her office, the noise level was rising. People were running. Someone was crying. She heard the ding of the elevator, followed by the unmistakable sound of the automated security gates slamming shut. The building was locking down. Non-payment for the smart grid utilities. She looked at the glass panel on her wall. Still dark. Dead. He had won. In less than 4 hours. He had dismantled her empire. And the worst part? He hadn't even raised his voice. He just walked away and taken the future with him. SFO International Terminal. I boarded the Gulfstream Claire had chartered without looking back. I sank into the buttery leather seat and accepted the espresso the flight attendant offered. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Chun. Ethan, I know you're gone, but please. The employees, they didn't do this. 3,000 people are going to lose their jobs because of her mistakes. Can you at least let payroll process? I stared at the message for a long moment. Sarah was a good engineer. She'd been loyal to the tech, if not always to me. I typed back. Payroll will process at 5 p.m. Full severance for all non-executive staff. Tell them to check their accounts. Consider a goodbye bonus for me. And Sarah, update your resume. I'll have a position for you in Austin next week if you want it. I sent it before I could second-guess the sentimentality. Then, I opened my laptop. The screen filled with the AuraX interface. It was cleaner, faster, more intuitive than the original. While Victoria was drowning in the mess she'd made, I was already building the next generation. I pulled up the live feed of Vantage's internal network. It was a sea of red, error messages flashing like strobe lights. Brad was still in there, frantically typing, trying to undo what he didn't understand. I watched him for a moment, a tiny figure in a massive digital landscape, completely out of his depth. I clicked a single button labeled Finalize. On the screen, a progress bar appeared. Transferring assets. 99%. 100%. A notification popped up. Acquisition of Vantage Corp complete. New entity. OIX Holdings. Status. Operational. I closed the laptop and looked out the window as the plane began to taxi. Below, the city of San Francisco glittered in the afternoon sun, somewhere in that maze of steel and glass. Victoria was realizing that the company she'd killed was now mine again. Every share, every patent, every line of code. And Brad? He was about to learn that the backdoor he'd been fiddling with was actually a one-way trip to a federal investigation into embezzlement. I made sure the logs looked like he'd been skimming for months. Let him explain that to the SEC. The plane lifted off, the ground falling away. I took a sip of my espresso. It was perfect. Mr. Cole, the flight attendant asked, would you like a celebratory drink? I glanced at my watch. It was 5 p.m. in San Francisco. Payroll would be hitting accounts right about now. Victoria would be getting the news that the company was officially insolvent. Not yet. I said, let's wait until we're over Nevada. I want to be able to see the lights go out behind us. The flight attendant smiled and moved away. I leaned back, closing my eyes. The hum of the engines was a steady, reassuring rhythm. For the first time in 5 years. It was the only sound I needed to hear. The game was over, and I'd cleaned the table. The conference room in the Four Seasons Austin smelled like money and expensive cologne. I stood at the head of the table, tapping a laser pointer against my palm, waiting for the chatter to die down. Across the table, Mitch Rollins from Sequoia leaned back, chewing on the end of his reading glasses. So, Ethan, catch us up. Last we heard, you were MIA after the Vantage meltdown. Now you're here pitching AuraX. What's the delta? I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up, showing a clean, minimalist interface. Delta? Vantage was a prototype. This is the engine. AuraX doesn't just predict market trends. It predicts human error. Specifically, the kind of error that comes from letting your high school sweetheart play sysadmin. A few of the VCs chuckled. Mitch didn't. He was staring at his phone, his brow furrowed. Speaking of errors, Mitch said, holding up his phone, I'm getting pings from our New York office. Vantage stock just flatlined. Trading halted. Rumor is, their entire logistics chain just ghosted. Trucks disappearing off the grid. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I shrugged, picking up my water glass. AuraX's predictive model flagged Vantage's instability 3 months ago. I might have shared that data with a few hedge funds. They acted on it. I just provided the weather forecast. I didn't sink the Titanic. Before Mitch could press, the door opened. Claire walked in, looking sharp in a charcoal suit. She didn't apologize for the interruption. She just slid a tablet in front of me. You want to see this? She said, her voice low. I glanced at the screen. It was a live feed from Vantage's internal security cameras. Brad was in the server room, surrounded by blinking lights, a screwdriver in one hand and a half-eaten protein bar in the other. He was sweating profusely, his face blotchy red. "What am I looking at?" I asked, though I already knew. Bradley's attempt at a Hail Mary, Claire said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "He's been trying to physically bypass the biometric scanners for the last 6 hours. Just managed to pry open the primary node." On the screen, Brad grinned triumphantly, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked directly into the camera. A dumb, reflexive habit. And gave a thumbs up. Then, he reached into the server rack and yanked out a cable labeled primary data link. The screen in my conference room flickered. The Aura X logo pulsed once, then stabilized. Down in San Francisco, every screen in the Vantage building would have just gone blue. Permanent system failure. Mitch dropped his glasses. "Holy shit, did he just pull the kill switch?" I finished. "Yep, the one I told Victoria specifically not to let him near." Looks like she didn't listen. Claire zoomed in on the feed. Victoria was there now, bursting into the server room. She looked like hell. Hair a mess, mascara smeared, her $5,000 suit wrinkled and stained. She grabbed Brad's arm, shaking him, even without audio. The panic was obvious. Brad was shaking his head, gesturing wildly at the dead servers. "She's calling you," Claire noted, looking at her own phone. "Third time in the last minute." I muted the ringer. "Let go to voicemail." It did. A second later, Claire's phone buzzed. She listened for a beat, then handed it to me. "Speaker. She's desperate." I hit the button. Victoria's voice filled the room, raw and ragged. "Ethan, pick up. For God's sake." Brad didn't mean to. The whole system is down. The website, the phones, the goddamn elevators. We're trapped up here. You have to do something." Mitch and the other VCs were dead silent, listening to the sound of a billion-dollar empire crumbling in real time. "Ethan," she screamed, "I'll give you anything. Double your old salary. Triple. I'll make you president. Just tell me how to fix it. Please." I leaned closer to the phone. "Fix it?" "Victoria." Brad didn't just break the system. He triggered the logic bomb, the one I buried in the firmware 6 months ago. The one that activates if an unauthorized user attempts physical access to the core nodes. "Logic bomb?" She choked out. What does that mean?" "It means the hardware is fried. The data is wiped. Permanently. And according to the IP reversion clause you signed, any damage to the core infrastructure resulting from negligence voids your insurance. You're liable for the full amount. All $2 billion. On the other end, I heard a choked sob, followed by the sound of glass breaking. Probably her monitor hitting the floor. You planned this. You set me up. I built a company. I corrected. You brought a Trojan horse into it. I just let him open the gate. By the way, Brad's still there?" A rustle. Then Brad's voice, shaky and defensive. "Ethan, listen, it was an accident. The wiring was confusing, and Vic was breathing down my neck. And, save it, Brad," I said, my voice turning to ice. "Check your personal email. I forwarded you something from the SEC. Seems they're interested in the $4.8 million that disappeared from the RD budget last quarter. Funny how the withdrawal dates match your trip to Vegas with the boys. Your signatures on the transfer forms. Sloppy. Silence. Then, a strangled noise from Brad. Victoria started screaming at him, something about embezzlement and prison. The connection died as she presumably lunged for him. I hung up. The VCs were staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. Mitch was the first to recover. He let out a low whistle. "Jesus. Ethan, that was brutal. You just fed her to the wolves and framed the boyfriend?" "I didn't frame him," I said, sitting back down. "He really did steal the money. I just made sure the audit trail was easy to follow. Call a parting gift." Claire tapped the tablet, bringing up a new set of figures. While they're busy eating each other, the acquisition of Vantage's tangible assets just cleared. We now own the building, the warehouse network, and the customer database, all for pennies on the dollar. Mitch leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "An Aura X? You said it's the evolved version. How does it handle what happened today?" I smiled. Aura X doesn't have a physical kill switch. It's decentralized, cloud native, and it learns. Today's events are already being processed as a hostile management takeover scenario. Next time, it'll liquidate the assets before the first love even gets his foot in the door. One of the younger VCs, a guy named Josh from Andreessen Horowitz, spoke up. This is incredible, but what about the legal blowback? Victoria is going to sue you into oblivion. She could try. Claire interjected. But Ethan's move this morning wasn't just a logout. It was a legal separation. He didn't steal the system. He reclaimed it under the Founders' Rights Act. And the glitches Brad triggered? Those were automated liquidations dictated by the prenuptial IP agreement. Every cent moved was legally Ethan's to move. Josh looked impressed. So, he's not just a genius coder. He's a legal savant. I read the fine print. I said, Victoria liked to call me volatile. I preferred meticulous. Mitch picked up his pen, clicking it nervously. All right, we're in. All of us. Name your valuation. I named a figure that made even these hardened investors blink. Then I added the kicker. But I want full operational control. No boards. No advisory roles for spouses or high school sweethearts. Just me and the code. Mitch extended his hand. Deal. But one condition. We want the rights to the story. The Ethan Cole origin story. It's going to be legendary. I shook his hand. Just make sure you get the ending right. I'm not the hero. I'm the guy who stopped the horror movie by burning down the theater. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. Handshakes, NDAs signed, and promises of term sheets by morning. As the VCs filed out, Claire stayed behind, watching me pack up my laptop. You enjoyed that, she observed, hearing her beg. I didn't deny it. She didn't beg for the company. Claire, she begged for her pride. There's a difference. And Brad, he thought he was a king because he could swipe a credit card. Today, he learned what it feels like to be a bug in the system. Claire checked her phone. Update from San Francisco. Security finally got the elevators running. Victoria ran out of the building. Brad's in custody. White-collar crimes unit picked him up at the lobby. Good, I said. I looked at the tablet one last time. The feed from the Vantage server room was dark. Truly dark. Make sure the story leaks that Brad was trying to destroy evidence when he fried the servers. It'll add 5 years to his sentence. Done, Claire said. She paused at the door. You know, you could have just taken the money and disappeared. Why stick around to watch it burn? I slung my bag over my shoulder. Because some lessons need a witness. Victoria thought she could replace the architect with a pretty face. Now she knows what the building looks like when the architect takes the blueprints with him. I walked out of the conference room, leaving the wreckage of Vantage Corp behind me. Austin was sunny. The air was clear, and my phone was finally silent. For now, the coffee shop on South Congress was too loud, too bright, and exactly where I needed to be. I sat by the window, the morning sun hot on my neck, watching the tech bros hustle past with their cold brew and overpriced backpacks. My phone sat face up on the scarred wooden table, the screen cycling through news alerts. Vantage Corp files for Chapter 11. Former CEO Victoria Vale arrested in connection with alleged SEC fraud. Brad Miller, ex-circuito, cooperating with feds, in embezzlement probe. I didn't look up when the chair across from me scraped against the floor. I felt her presence before I saw her dot a cold draft. A scent of expensive perfume that had turned sour with sweat and desperation. Victoria Vale looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backward. Her hair was a tangled mess. Her makeup long gone except for the raccoon-eyed smudges of old mascara. She wore a wrinkled blazer that cost more than most people's rent, but it hung off her like a shroud. She didn't sit. She collapsed into the chair, her hands shaking as they gripped the edge of the table. Ethan, she whispered. Her voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper on bone. I finally looked up, sipping my black coffee. Victoria, you look like hell. Did Brad forget to bail you out? She flinched. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, darted around the cafe, checking if anyone recognized her. A few did. They looked away quickly, pretending to scroll through their phones. The Queen of Vantage was a ghost. I need you to call your lawyer. She stammered, trying to steady her voice and failing. Claire, tell her to drop the charges. Tell the SEC it was a misunderstanding. I'll reinstate you. I'll make you CEO. You'll what? I cut her off, setting my mug down with a soft clink. Sign another piece of paper you don't read? You already gave me the company. Victoria. Remember? The IP reversion clause? The one you said was just a formality while we were sipping Mai Tais in Hawaii? She slammed her palm on the table, making the silverware jump. A few heads turned. That's not fair. You tricked me. You set me up to fail. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I didn't set you up. I built a system. You were the one who decided to hand the keys to a guy who thinks Python is a snake and Java is an island. I just watched you drive the car off the cliff. Tears started streaming down her face. She didn't bother wiping them away. Please, Ethan, I'm ruined. They're taking everything. The house, the cars, the penthouse. Brad's saying I told him to move the money. He's throwing me under the bus. He's not wrong. I said, my tone flat. You did tell him to handle the discrepancies. Your texts are in the discovery files. Page 412. Make it go away. Brad, use the RD slush fund if you have to. Real smooth. Beak. She choked on a sob, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. For a second, I felt a flicker of something not pity. But maybe the ghost of the woman I married before the IPO changed her. It passed quickly. I'll give you anything. She mumbled into her palms. Anything you want. Just stop this. Please. I pulled a folded document from my jacket and slid it across the table. It was thick, stapled, and stamped with the seal of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. Too late. I said, Aura X Holdings completed the asset purchase an hour ago. We bought Vantage Corp's tangible assets, the buildings, the warehouses, the servers, 412 cents on the dollar. We also acquired the debt. All of it. She looked up, her face blotchy and wet. What does that mean? It means, I said, tapping the document, that I own the building you used to call your headquarters. I own the servers Brad fried, and I own the outstanding loans you personally guaranteed, which, according to Texas law, allows me to seize your personal assets to cover the shortfall, including that beach house in Malibu you bought with an anonymous bonus. Victoria stared at the paper like it was a death warrant. You bought the ashes? Why? Because I could. I said, and because burning it down wasn't enough. I wanted to own the ground it stood on. I wanted to be the one to sign the paperwork that turned your name into a footnote in a bankruptcy filing. She reached for the document, her fingers trembling. I let her take it. She scanned the pages, her breath hitching as she saw the bottom line. The total acquisition cost, the list of seized properties, her name, listed as the primary debtor. You're a monster, she whispered. I shrugged. I'm a businessman. You're the one who confused a prenup with a suggestion. You wanted me gone? You got your wish. You just didn't realize that when I left. I took the gravity with me. The bell above the cafe door jingled. Claire walked in, looking impeccable as always in a tailored navy suit. She spotted us, gave a slight nod, and headed for the counter to order a latte. Victoria's eyes widened. She's with you? Of course. I said, she's been with me for 6 months. Since I realized you were getting too cozy with Brad. Claire helped me restructure the IP holdings. She's the one who drafted the reversion clause you signed without reading. Smart woman. Expensive, but worth every penny. Victoria looked between me and Claire, a horrifying realization dawning in her eyes. The lawyer. You were sleeping with her? Claire returned, setting a latte down in front of me before sitting in the empty chair beside me. She didn't look at Victoria. Professionally, Victoria, unlike your arrangement with Brad, Ethan and I kept our relationship strictly transactional. He provides the vision. I provide the legal framework to ensure people like you can't dismantle it with a poorly thought out affair. Victoria's face crumpled. She looked around the cafe, at the strangers who weren't looking at her, at the life she'd lost, at the man she betrayed. I don't have anywhere to go, she whispered. The feds took my cards. I'm staying in a motel off I-35. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. Claire stood with me. I looked down at Victoria, a woman who once commanded boardrooms and now couldn't command a glass of water. Happy anniversary, Victoria. I said, 5 years ago today. We said I do. Today, I'm saying goodbye. Enjoy the motel. I hear the Wi-Fi is spotty. I turned to leave. Victoria grabbed my wrist. her grip surprisingly strong despite her state. Ethan, wait. Please. I'll change. I'll be better. Just don't leave me like this. I looked at her hand on my wrist, then back at her face. I gently pried her fingers off, one by one. You didn't just leave me, Victoria, I said quietly. You erased me. You told the board I was emotional. You told Brad I was obsolete. You made me a ghost in my own company. Now, you get to be the ghost. Live with it. I walked out, Claire falling in a step beside me. The Texas heat hit us like a wall. My car was idling at the curb, a matte black Tesla Model S, paid for with the proceeds from the Cayman accounts Victoria had tried to raid. As I opened the door, Victoria stumbled out of the cafe, shielding her eyes from the sun. Ethan, she screamed, her voice cracking. Come back. I still love you. I paused, one foot in the car. I looked back at her. She was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, a pathetic, broken figure in a world that no longer recognized her name. No, you don't, I said, loud enough for her to hear. You love the idea of me, the guy who made you rich. But you never loved the guy who stayed up till 3 a.m. fixing the code so you could have your fancy launch parties. That guy? He died the day you let Brad touch the server rack. I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door. Through the tinted glass, I saw her sink to her knees on the hot pavement, her face in her hands, her body racked with sobs. A few pedestrians stopped to gawk. One pulled out a phone, probably recording. The former queen of tech, reduced to a viral video. Claire buckled her seatbelt. Cold. Ethan, even for you. I pulled into traffic, leaving the cafe and Victoria behind. Just final. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. A notification from the NASDAQ feed. Vantage Corp, VG delisted. Shares valued at $0. I smiled. Claire noticed. Feeling better? I'm feeling done, I said. I tapped the screen, switching to a different feed. X was live, processing over 10,000 transactions a second. Clean. Efficient. Mine. What's next? Claire asked, scrolling through her own tablet. Next, I said, merging onto the highway. We scale. X goes global next quarter. We expand into Europe, Asia, and we make sure everyone knows who built the engine. And Victoria? I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was gone, lost in the blur of Austin traffic. She's yesterday's news. Let her find Brad in whatever jail cell they've put him in. They can compare notes on how it feels to bet against the house and lose everything. I accelerated, the electric motor humming smoothly. The sun was high, the sky was clear, and for the first time in 5 years, the only voice in my head was my own. Take me to the office. I told Claire, I want to check the overnight logs. Already did, she said, handing me her tablet. 0 errors, 0 anomalies, just pure, predictable profit. I took the tablet, scanning the lines of code. Perfect, unbreakable, just like I designed it. Behind us, the city faded into the distance. Somewhere, a woman was learning that you can't fire the architect and expect the building to stand. And somewhere, a man was learning that you can't steal a kingdom if the king still holds the deed. I handed the tablet back to Claire. Good, keep it that way. I looked out the window, watching the world go by. It was a good day, a great day, actually. The day the music died for Vantage Corporation and the day it started playing again for me. Happy anniversary, Vic, I muttered to the empty air. Then, I turned up the radio and drove on.